well, welcome to Good Enough Chats. My name's Dan Boucher. I'm the host of the pod, and today I'm joined by John. John, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Dan. How are you? Very good today.
Yeah, I'm excited. As John knows, this is a peek behind the curtain. This is the first recording of the next season of Good Enough Chat, so I'm really excited to get these conversations off the bat. And it's also the first time I'm recording on this new recording platform, so I'm coming into this with slightly more trepidation than I would do normally, John. So I apologise if it glitches in the middle of it and I start to look panicked.
I like being the guinea pig. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, you're in totally safe hands. Very experienced professional at the helm here. John, would you mind just briefly introducing yourself to our audience, please? So, name, where you're from, what you do for a living, home life situation, and because I think it's really important that the audience understands this, what your favourite flavour of crisps is.
God, what a question. Right, yeah. So I'm John Stacey. I work in marketing. I have worked in marketing for about 15 years. And then as an aside or as an extracurricular, I've also worked across numerous different methods of mental health and support and in the community and charity work. I live in Lincoln, so just outside of Lincoln in Lincolnshire. If you don't know where Lincoln, Lincolnshire is, a lot of people don't know where Lincoln, Lincolnshire is. It's kind of on the east side of the world, of the UK rather, and it's sort of in between or nestled near to Nottingham, Sheffield, those kinds of bigger cities. We're about an hour away from most big cities, kind of nicely disconnected. I'm a husband, I'm a dad. I have two small girls. They are 7.5 and my youngest turns 4 on Sunday. So we're gearing up for that. And gosh, favorite flavor of crisps. So this is a tricky one. As you know, we've spoken about this before. I'm well into my crisps as well, but it's a tricky one because I think about this far too much. And I'm very, very, very judgmental on crisps.
Oh,
So I'm going to ask you as well afterwards what yours is because I just need to know. But mine will probably be, if we're talking about flavor and we're talking about kind of in the main across most sort of styles of crisps and across sort of each kind of type of crisp, I'd have to go with a cheese and onion. If you're talking like your basic flavors.
yeah.
And if I'm choosing out of anything in the world, my favorite crisps are Torres egg crisps. Have you ever heard of those? Have you ever had them?
No.
Oh my God, they are the best crisps. They're expensive because they come in from wherever they come in from, Portugal, Spain, or whatever. You can get them in Waitrose, I believe, or you can get them in other places too. But yeah, Torres is the brand, and the crisps are egg flavored crisps, and they're amazing. Yeah, that's the face most people
Really?
pull. Yeah,
Really?
yeah, yeah. Honestly, if don't knock it till you try it. It's one of them. But they are amazing, amazing. What's yours?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I can't compete with egg flavored Spanish crisps. I mean, I'm intrigued. I would say of the basic flavor, anything bacon flavor. I am of the firm belief that if it tastes of bacon, it's always better. So standard out of the bag bacon flavor. My favorite probably of all time is more of a brand, and I don't think you can get them anymore, but it's Brannigan's.
Oh, yeah, Brannigan's are lovely. Yeah, yeah.
Remember they had like a ham and pickle or a bit of beef, sorry, ham and mustard and beef and mustard flavors,
Mm.
but they were quite thick and the flavor was incredibly dense, and they didn't just show it to the mustard. They
Mm.
steeped it in the mustard. So
Yeah.
it's like wasabi, you know? You could eat wasabi peas and then all of a sudden you'll hit a wasabi pocket and your head will get blown off.
Yeah, not a massive fan of the mustard generally, so I'm not a huge. I can't agree with you on that.
Oh dear,
but
son.
the
The judgment's coming.
but I don't mind a bacon crisp. I don't mind a bacon crisp. One thing I find with bacon crisps, this is where I get deep about crisps. You see, one thing I find about bacon crisps is depending on what bacon crisps you go for, they taste more like bacon, like real bacon, than others. And I think sometimes if you're having a really really basic, cheap bacon crisp, it doesn't really taste anything like bacon.
I agree.
An example of that, which are still really nice, but they're not really bacon, is Frazzles. they don't really taste like bacon. They taste
No,
like something completely
but
different.
they are sensational.
Yeah, they are good. So I think maybe I'm a purist, because cheese and
Mm.
onion, you kind of can't go wrong, and they always taste similar or the same, and then they just have different levels of how much flavour, depending on which. Discos are just, they're steeped in cheese and onion, aren't they? They're just like so like thick cheese and onion. Frisps are like, deep cheese and onion. Them. But yeah, could go on for hours about this. Should we just make a whole
Oh,
podcast about crisps? Why
wow.
not?
I didn't realize that my new standardized opening question was going to be so on the money for you. That's perfect. Okay, the bar is. I say to guests on this show, listen to other episodes before you come on if you want to understand what it's like, but don't compare yourself to other guests because everyone's experience is unique. I'm going to make an exception for this specific part of the conversation. That is the most comprehensive crisp or snack related answer that I've ever had on any of these, and
Well,
I've
well,
achieved.
I'll take that. Thank you. I mean, I also think I could go on longer and make it more comprehensive, but let's not bore people to
Yeah, it's
tears
not a
right for the
crisp
first.
podcast, John.
No,
Step away
no,
from
it's
the
not.
crisps. Actually, that's a phrase that people have often said to me: "Step away from the crisps."
Likewise.
So before we jump into the questions, John, I just wanted to, for the benefit of the audience, to kind of recap on this, on
Mm,
how these conversations work. So, John knows what the kind of the core 5 questions are that are coming. As with all the guests, I share that in advance so that uh, they can decide how much they want to prepare for it. I don't know what John's answers are going to be to these questions, and John hasn't written a script for his answers either. So it is very much a chat. But the reason it's important that those 5 questions exist are because John's in control of the conversation at all time. So if we start to stray off on a tangent based on some of his answers to the questions and he doesn't feel comfortable going down that route, all he's got to do is say, I don't really want to talk about that. And we'll go back to the main 5 questions. Okay. So John's in control at all times. And without further ado, John, let's jump straight in with question number 1, which is, why are you here today talking about your lived experiences of mental health?
So, yeah, just to, I guess, prefix most of my answers on purpose, I didn't go back to the questions. I wanted to almost half forget them so that I could come in a little bit blind, because that's how I feel best at answering questions. I don't like to even, preempt my own thoughts in that respect. And I think the reason why I wanted to be on and talk to yourself was, I mean, first and foremost, I've listened to a handful of episodes, quite a few episodes actually, and I just think what you're doing is fantastic in a sense of allowing people's perspectives and experiences to flow and become more open, and having that kind of safety mixed with that growth element of just letting it out, but also kind of understanding where it comes from. And it's something I feel very strongly about and always have felt very strongly about in the work that I've done in the mental health space, working in peer support. I've run, numerous different types of activities and groups for men and for young people, not just young boys, but kind of groups of school children. We used to hold sort of talks and things like that, and we'd still do kind of workshops. So something that I really fully believe in is just having those avenues and opportunities to really open your mind and open that mouth and talk more about kind of what's perhaps trickier to talk about on a daily basis. Those things that perhaps we are conditioned, or we are securing ourselves to not talk all the time about it, which is fine and safe and good for the most part. But it's those kinds of we're from a generation and a culture of our male counterparts in the older generations, and we're kind of trying to break that stigma, aren't we, of never talking about any of this. And
Yeah.
and I feel that I'd love to be part of it. Essentially, I'd love to sort of tell perhaps just a small percentage of my very checkered and roller coaster journey and story, and hopefully, my experiences and my feelings and my outlook can support and help others, because one of the things I really truly believe in is, we're all quite similar. We're all quite the same. My side thing that I do now is called the Everyman Talks, and I feel like I am an everyman. I don't feel like I'm special in any kind of wild and wonderful and unique way. We are all unique, and I think I'm special at certain things. I've got a special, you know, penchant for crisps, for example, and there's things that are special about me. But I don't proclaim to be any better than anyone. That's the point I'm trying to make. And I think I've come across so many different people from all walks of life, and every time I've sat down and talked to them and had this kind of chat, it is remarkable how much we can connect and relate to each other. And I feel that men generally across lots of different generations, but generally in our generation, are very isolated, believing for whatever reason, the social, cultural, generational issues that are in play, that they're alone, that they're isolated. So yes, that's why I'm here. I want to be one of those good enough chats that hopefully people can relate to and people can feel less alone because of someone like myself. And, I think you're doing that wonderful work now. So glad to be here.
Thank you, mate. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you to say that. I also want to, put on record that I appreciate all the stuff that you've been doing for so long now to help other people as well.
Thank you, mate.
I just think it's one of the sort of the legacies of the experience that I had with my own mental health was just this feeling of this recognition that at some point you realize the reason that you feel isolated is because other people are not talking about it. Or if they are talking about it, they're talking about it in, I guess, sort of vague enough terms that it doesn't really resonate with you, and you still feel like you're the only person that's going through those kind of experiences. And that's really the sort of the driving force behind any of these conversations, and the platform is, let's just try and chip away at that idea that men can't talk about this stuff, because I believe that if more guys hear other guys talking about it, it encourages them to not bottle it up. And hopefully it helps a few people to stop kind of going down that path where they find themselves in dire straits and in crisis at some point in the future. So I'm really grateful for having you to come on, and I can already tell from the way that you discussed that quite how eloquent you are and how thoughtful you are about what we're going to be discussing today. Bit of a kind of a reality check for you. How has the last week been for you?
Not great. And I don't have any shame in talking about that. I have some exhaustion in talking about that, mainly because, one thing I find a bit more, a bit easier than I used to. It's not fully easy, but a bit easier than I used to, is talking about it. And I've talked plenty about the last week with people who I trust and people who I know will understand. But I've got quite a bit going on. It's safe to say. It's one of those seasons, if you want to call it, where there just seems to be quite a lot happening. There's workload overwhelm, which I think I can normally handle. I'm pretty experienced in work, and when it becomes overwhelming, peaks and troughs of those kinds of things, I can normally ride them out pretty well. Ride the anxiety, ride the pressure. It's one thing I'm really proud of, actually, that I've come to a point where I'm really resilient in that perspective. But the problem I've got with the current overwhelm and kind of workload issue is there's other stuff going on, so it's kind of compounded. So I've had some issues with my family, where so I won't go into the massive story because it's a massive story, but I'm estranged from my mother, have been for about 8 years, since my daughter was born, and she's not very well, and my sister and my brother are tackling the situation, and they're kind of reaching out to me. Do I want to hear about it? Do I want to know what's happening? And at first I was very much like, well, this isn't going to make much difference to my life, so I'm not really that bothered. I've grieved. I've kind of had my disconnects and all that. But then I think curiosity got the better of me, plus my empathy towards, oh dear, they're going to have to take this on. And I was worried about them, even though we don't have the greatest relationship anymore between me and my siblings. We don't see enough of each other, don't speak to each other enough. So we just don't. We've just sort of slipped away from each other a little bit. But that's kind of brought up a lot of feelings because I am now worried about those guys. And I've fed that in. And we've had some deeper conversations, which is just hard and exhausting and tiring. And, you have that lingering nag with regards to the ultimate sort of point of, if she is going to die effectively, how does that then impact them two, first of all, then myself and my family? Despite all of the grieving I've done, despite the fact that I've kind of put a lot of things to bed in my own mind, I don't know how that's going to affect me. A lot of people ask me, what will happen, now when your mum dies, how will you feel? What will you do? And I always answer it the same. I've got no idea. I think I know, but you just don't know when these things
No.
happen. So that's in the back of my mind. My wife's grandma is not very well. She's in hospital. She's 93. She's a lot older than my mum. But she's unbelievably strong, like crazy strong, as in seems to be fighting off everything that happens to her. The doctors are probably not saying the exact words, but beating around the bush and saying, I can't believe she's still going. But that's put a lot of pressure on my life as well, because my wife is incredibly, she has a very good relationship with the grandma. She's already lost grandparents, so she's kind of very worried about it happening again. So all of that combined in the last week or so, and when you lay it out like that, and this is the problem that I've had in the past, and I'm sure a lot of men or people will feel the same, you don't often collect everything together and kind of understand the impact that a lot of things can happen. So when you sort of articulate them, and this is a conversation I had on sort of Wednesday last week, I was laying it all out and someone just turned around to me and went, no wonder you're struggling. No wonder physically you've got some issues. No wonder, because I had like chest pains. I had like kind of some kind of, I was struggling to breathe. I had headaches. And I know from previously a few years ago, struggling with panic disorder, that's how it kind of presents in me. So I started to get fearful about panic disorder rearing its ugly head. For anyone who doesn't know, panic disorder is a nice, wonderful cocktail of anxiety attacks and panic attacks. So I kind of didn't want that to happen because that feels horrendous, like you're dying. And I kind of was really proud of myself for listening to that person and going, oh shit, yeah. Oh, sorry, can I swear on this? Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
I sort of went, oh shit, yeah, you're right. This is like layers and layers and layers of pain, of struggle, of stuff that normally individually I can deal with because I'm quite a resilient cat, but the combination was, like I say, to use the analogy again, a cocktail from hell. So Thursday, really struggled to get through the day, physically, mentally. Friday morning, I got up and I thought I need to try and I had some stuff I needed to box off. And then I was like, once I've boxed it off, I'm going to just take some sick leave and just go. But I got up and having had 10 hours sleep, felt like I'd not slept at all. And my body was, for want of a better way of describing it, screaming at me. My legs were hurting. My back was hurting. My neck felt like somebody twisted it in the night. My head was banging. My nose hurt. And like my face all around here was like hurting. And I couldn't breathe, even just like talking in one meeting at 8:30 that I had, where I was barely talking because it was a listening meeting. I was just listening to the commercial team talking to me. And they asked me if I had anything I wanted to relay, and I couldn't form a sentence. And it was laughable. They were all laughing and joking. And I just turned around to them and I just said, yeah, I think I'm going to go off sick after this because I'm really struggling, as you can probably tell. And everybody just sort of went, yeah, you don't look great. And I think, again, that's one of the things that I've started to try and tune into a bit more. When people who I trust and even lightly care, I know they lightly care about me. If they flag, you look like shit. That's a good sign to like listen, because I don't know about you, but I've got to a point in my life where don't really look in the mirror a lot anymore. Like, I don't really check myself out. Like, I'm not bothered anymore. Like, I spend about 30 seconds on this. I brush my teeth and I look down when I'm brushing my teeth. And I think I don't really ever really look at myself. And I think on numerous points last week, people were saying that the bags under my eyes, which I normally have bags. I've got 2 small kids, right? I'm tired, like, but the bags under my eyes look like someone had punched me. So
Mm.
I was laughing and joking about that. Oh yeah, I've been in a fight with the sleep monster and all this, like. But then I had a look and I'm like, Jesus, I do look like shit. So yeah, all of those kind of nice flags. I'm proud of myself for listening, because previously I wouldn't have listened. I'd gone, no, I'm fine. Suck it up, crack on. So yeah, Friday came. I tried to get as much done as I can Friday, and then just sat it off and tried to sit and just be still and just, bummed out, had a bit of TV and just tried to not think about work, not think about anything, just tried to sort of disassociate from reality a little bit.
Mm.
Um, and then I've spent the sort of weekend just trying to have nice conversations and lovely conversations with people, and just trying to sort of build that kind of good feeling back, and try and fight away some of the work anxiety, knowing that I'd be off this week and work would be piling up. And now I'm here. So
Well,
I'm kind of here, but like, yeah, I've been through a bit and I'm feeling better. I'm feeling a slightly bit better.
I just want to sort of play back to you something, because you've said it and I hope you've heard it, but the fact that you spotted that and you recognised that, you really should be proud. That is a measure of that is the best possible measure of progress, right? The circumstances that you've just described would be too much for anyone to just carry on normally. The fact that you've spotted that, and the fact that you are taking proactive steps to help you to manage that is everything. And if ever there was an example of the fact that mental health is not a linear journey for anyone to go down, your well-being will fluctuate, things will land in the path that you'll need to navigate your way around. I think that's it, and you should be really proud with you. And John as well, I really appreciate that you still decided to come onto this pod and to have this conversation now, because it would have been totally justifiable to not do that. You could have
Yeah.
told that, and you didn't, and I appreciate it. But even as said at the start, if we go down a route that you're not comfortable with, if it starts to get too much, you just need to say, and we'll hit pause. Okay.
No, thank you, Dan. I mean, one thing, 2 things I find myself to be very bittersweet about myself these days with all the journeys I've been on. Is one thing is self-aware, very self-aware, but seem to still miss a lot. So I am proud, and thank you for pointing that out, and I'll just continue to try and recognize and listen and do that, because it's impossible to be fully self-aware of everything. But the flip side to that is you can be too self-aware sometimes.
Oh yeah.
You can almost kind of cut that off and be a bit like, oh, this is too much. But then the second point is, and this is the reason why I think now I've thought about it, and now we've been speaking a little bit. I think the reason why I'm here is, if we'd have cancelled or postponed until I was in a better place, if you want to call it that, I'm not entirely sure that the conversation would be that authentic in a point of view of life is always up and down, right? All the time. And that's not to say we'd get a rubbish pod out of me feeling in a better place, right? I just think one of my biggest things is authenticity. I can't stand the way that people portray themselves as authentic, and it really isn't. It's a copy of something else, or it's a mask they're putting on. And what I pride myself in is understanding the need of a mask sometimes to get through something, but understanding the times where it's really useful and really important for me, first and foremost, and then for others, to just have all the masks stripped away and just be vulnerable, authentic, open, and happy to do that. And I think I think I'll get a lot from this conversation, and I think that's the other reason why I was like, I kind of think I need this, So, yeah, don't worry, but I will flag if I'm struggling.
Yeah, please do, and also take all that you can get out of the conversation as well. I know I've found them cathartic in the past. I know other guests have even expressed sort of a sense of guilt that they felt better coming out of one of the conversations. I don't, for goodness sake, like if anyone needs to feel better coming off the back of it, it should be you, right? You're the one that's telling your
Yeah,
story. If you feel better as a result of doing that, then everyone wins.
I find that
So
funny. I find that funny, but it's another stigma of ours, isn't it? That we feel guilty when we're happy sometimes, or feel
yeah,
guilty that we received something that was good. Like almost like I always the way I always feel is, well, if I feel good about taking something from that, I've taken something from somebody else, and it's like, well, the reality of it is you wouldn't be doing this, Dan, if you didn't also want to do it. So I've not
yeah,
taken anything from you, and actually, from a point of view of telling my story, no one's taking anything from me. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
no.
So, I think it's just that it's a cultural problem, isn't it, that we live in? But
It is. It is one
yeah,
of those things I think we just got to keep on showing people that it's okay. If enough
mm,
people show that
yeah,
it's okay rather than telling that it's okay, then
yeah, yeah,
eventually the penny will drop, right?
yeah.
Um, Thank you for setting that context out, John. That's really important for the listeners to understand where you're coming from right now as well. Um, but let's look at how your relationship with your mental health has evolved. And I say to people with this one, you can take this back to whenever you want to. It could be 6 months ago, it could be 20 years ago. It's you start the journey where you want to start it. And what I'm really keen to understand is, what were those signs that you picked up on, possibly most likely with the benefit of hindsight, because that's a wonderful thing, right? And how has that evolved along the way? And then in the next question, we'll talk about specific moments where you've suddenly gone, "Oh shit, now I understand." But we'll come to
A lot
that
of them.
next, right?
Yeah, no. So I'll try not to be confusing when I describe this because there's a bit of jumping around timelines, I think. But to put it quite bluntly, up until 12 years ago now. So my life up until about 12 years ago, so I was probably late 20s, 27, 28. I didn't really believe in mental health. I was one of them. I was a stereotype. I was, well, you've got anxiety, you just worry too much. If you're sad, if you're depressed, you're just a little bit sad, just cheer up, find something that makes you happy. Very simplistic. And I was with my partner now. We weren't married. We didn't have kids. We bought our first house and was doing a job I could do standing on my head. There was no real pressure and stress. But I certainly felt pressured by family situations and issues around family. And I had crippling migraines for about a month on and off. And I always thought migraines were hereditary, and they're not. They're nothing to do with genetics. Especially the ones I was having, they were kind of like frontal lobe, kind of the pain that I get now around stress is the same thing here. And again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. You learn about things as you go through the journey, right? But at the time, I was like, oh, I just get them because my family all get them, right? And someone suggested antidepressants, going to the doctors and getting some antidepressants. And I said, I don't need antidepressants, not going anywhere near them. Don't understand why you think I need them. That's weird, kind of thing. But I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, I can prescribe you antidepressants, or I can prescribe you onto the list to get some counselling. And at the time, so this is 12 years ago, at the time, there wasn't that much of a waiting list. It was sort of about 2 or 3 months, which, Christ, in the world we live in now, that's like really quick.
Mm.
So I booked in and was incredibly annoyed with having to do this, but I thought, I don't want the antidepressants. I need to figure out what's going on. Let's just try it. Was going to bail, didn't bail, forced myself through the door, and sat down in front of the counsellor like a petulant child, and she asked me a million questions, and I answered them with one-word answers and struggled to really answer any of them because I just didn't really want to talk to a stranger about anything that she was asking me. At the end of the session, she turned around to me and she went, "You did really well today." And I went, "No, I didn't. I barely answered any of your questions. What are you on about? I don't think I'm going to come back next week." And she went, "No, I think you've spoken about stuff today that you've probably never spoken about before, and I think that's an amazing step. And I think what I've written down here is that you've done incredibly well, and I'd really like to see you next week because I think we could get some more, and it can be happening. It can be great." And I just sort of went, "What can be great?" I turned around to her, I said, "What can be great? What am I going to get from this? Like, tell me what the outcome is." And she goes, "I can't tell you that. It's down to you." So I turned around and I said, "Well, I don't really understand what I'm trying to get from this, but I'll give you another go. I'll give you two goes because maybe I felt a bit of like an endorphin hit that she was telling me I was a good boy or whatever. I don't know." Went back the next week and obviously felt a bit more comfortable at the process. So, walked straight through, didn't have to worry and it wasn't sort of anxious about it, what have you. Sat down and all of a sudden I was like, bleh, like verbal diarrhea about like everything. So I was flitting around talking about all this stuff and it was just incredible. And I came away just feeling like lighter and just so happy. So then kind of fast forward I'd say a few years of going in and out of different types of counselling and therapy purely because I'd unearthed that I needed to work on numerous different things within my psyche and within my mindset and within my mental health. And I'd got incredibly excited because I'd had my eyes open to this incredible world of all of this stuff that actually was all scientifically proven. And that was my problem. I'd never really seen any proof and I'd never really seen any science, I guess. I'd always been skeptical about it all. So I kind of fell in love with it all, but also got really massive lows from it when I couldn't find a massive win where I'm just fixed all of a sudden. So it was a complete roller coaster. And then I had a session with a different counsellor about 2 or 3 years later. And I was moaning about my mum. I was moaning about my family, and I was worried about becoming a dad. And I was ranting and raving angrily. And I turned around, and the counsellor cut me off. They don't often cut you off when you're talking, but he cut me off. And he turned around and he said, "Why can't John be happy?" And I burst into tears. And I was stunned. I had no idea he was going to say that. I weirdly knew exactly what he meant straight away. And I think a massive part of 30 years of my life was me doing and being something that was not myself. And as a result of that, I was not allowing myself to be happy. So we talked a little bit more. And I think that set me on to self-discovery, if you want to call it that, where I was just then driving towards a way that I could understand myself. that came kind of full circle in a sense of acceptance. So I landed on a thing that a lot of people talk about, but for me, it was just transformational. And the more you become aware of everything within your mind and who you are, the more you start to feel great about some stuff, but chastise yourself and feel guilty about this other stuff and all this time gone by that you could have changed. And there was a point, I don't know exactly when, but it was similar time with all that around becoming a dad, where I was massively panicking and worried about the lack of control becoming a dad. Of course, you're going to have lack of control. But I'm mild control freak. I don't know. So I was really worried that I was going to produce this child that was going to be a basket case, to put it, bluntly, because I had gone through this 30 years of struggle. And I think I just had this moment where I was like, I just need to accept that I'm not perfect and I'm never going to be perfect. But in accepting that, I need to also accept that I can be as good as I can be. So when things happen or I do things that are wrong or I do things that could be better, I need to just let them go or learn from them and just move on and not dwell on them or feel guilty, this guilt thing again. So that's a kind of like short-term 12 years journey, very, very short, kind of loads of detail within the middle there that I've not gone into, but to sort of go back in time what I've learned over the time of lots of different therapy and talking to people, probably the main reason or the main reasons that I struggled in my 20s and was kind of all over the place, hedonistic kind of lifestyle, very unhappy, but didn't realize I was unhappy. Center of attention, always wanting to be in the center of the group, always wanting to be in lots of different friendship groups, doing lots of different things, lots of different, always had lots of interests, and constantly needing to be around people. I think what I learned was I was incredibly lonely, even though I was around people. And I was a chameleon. I was just trying to fit in. I was trying to understand. I was trying to get people to like me all the time without really understanding and accepting that they did. They just did. And certainly some of them just did despite all of that act I was putting on. Not all of them. Some people are drawn to the act, and that's that. But where did that come from? And I think some of the therapy I did helped me understand that with regards to alienation, emotional kind of abuse from parents growing up. My parents split up when I was 13, and my brother and sister had moved away. They were older than me, and I was left with my mum when my dad moved away. And my mum was in a horrible place mentally. She was struggling in lots of different ways, and that was all on me. And it's funny things that just come out in hindsight, like you say. Like my best friend, I've got some really good friends, and they're friends of mine that I say are family, and they are family. And one of my best friends said to me not so long ago, about a year ago, we were just talking about the past, and I was just trying to give him a bit more insight into the past and how what I'd learned over the years, because we don't always talk about this kind of stuff. We don't need to. And he stopped dead in his tracks, and he said, he comes from an Italian background, cultural kind of background, where they're always massive family together. No, he's half Italian, and or he'll tell everybody he's Italian, but he's half Italian. And I used to go around all the time. I used to be like an extended member of the family to all of their family gatherings. I knew all of their family extended, to a point where they'd all say hello to me, give me hugs, lots of love. I just thought it was great. I just thought I was just part of their family. I was accepted into their family, and that's what was lovely about it. They're just lovely people who just accept me. But he turned around to me the other day, about a year ago now, I think, and he just said, I think we all knew that something was going on. I think we all knew that you needed that. I think my mum and dad, my extended family, almost kind of took you in because they thought they had to. And I was stunned when he said that, because I hadn't realized. I'd looked back and I hadn't realized that that's what they were doing. They saw me struggling with my family situation and having no one really, and wanted to give me that love. So I think you don't really know, do you? But I assume, and I've worked out enough to figure out that a lot of the reasons why I was the way I was and still am the way I am to a point was due to that lack of love, care, attention, lack of desire, feeling like I wasn't needed and wanted to be around. And I'm massively grateful of the work I've done on myself, but I'm massively grateful of the people who've come into my life, my wife, some of my friends now, and my best friends that have stuck by me, because I feel without them, I wouldn't be where I am. And I feel like they understand me, the real me, as real as I can be these days. And they haven't faltered. They haven't changed their way of thinking, despite the fact that really they knew a different person when they first started to get to know me. And, what I've learned to do is that mirror moment again, where I've gone, they love me. And that's really great. And I need to sort of go, isn't that great? And enjoy it, rather than going, why do they love me? I'm terrible, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not a short version. That's a long story, but that is the short version. There's so many different things in the middle of all that. But that's kind of hopefully a bit of context about me and where I've come from. And again, to circle back a little bit, hate that phrase, circle back, but to circle back a little bit, I've come across so many people who've been in a very similar position to me at different walks of life. And I feel like there's just maybe that societal generational thing where, I'm not the only one, and that's great. I feel great about that. But then I also feel incredibly empathetic, and I'm like, oh my God, you just need to see things my way. Like please let me talk to you about this and try and help you out.
It's really hard, isn't it, when you have that sort of realization yourself and you can see it in other people. It's really hard accepting that those people have to go on the journey and they have to kind of be ready to realize it for themselves, right? Because you can
Yeah.
see the pain, but you can't fast track it for them. All you can do is like is try to be there to support them when they need you.
Yeah.
But it is, yeah, it's so hard to kind of. But then, what a level of progress is that to be able to say, and I reflect this on myself as well as on you here, to be in a position where you can realise that, and you can see it in someone else, and you can recognise that you've been through it yourself. I mean, that
Mm.
is, again, that's another massive indication of progress, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for, like I say, I mean, first and very foremost, well beyond everything else. Um, I try to regularly, hard
It's easy
word
for you to say.
when you've only had one coffee. Um, I try to regularly look back and kind of go, I'm very grateful for the work that I've done, and by grateful, I'm proud and happy that I've had catalysts and prods and nudges and, you know, counselors, therapists, other people pointing things out to me. And I've had an open mind after that 12 years ago when I didn't have an open mind to actually just hear it. And I don't have to agree. I don't have to think they're right. But more often than not, people's perceptions hold some truth. It's
Mm.
their truth. And there could be an ounce of their truth that you share, or it could be everything they're saying. And I think, you know, I was so content with just ignoring people and always thinking I was right when I was in my 20s. And a lot of that again came from that childhood of survive, you know, like I have no guidance here. I have um no driving force to help me make decisions. So I had to. And as a result, you develop this hard exterior, this arrogance, whatever you want to call it, this fake mask that just knows what to do.
Mm.
And everyone else is wrong. And you know, I'm still surprised to this day that after our first date, my wife wanted to see me again, and she's still here now. But I'm sure she is quite surprised too sometimes. But it's a really good thing that and that's pivotal really. And I've spoken to her about this because as I met her, I was settling into learning a lot more about myself, but I had no idea what all that was. I was still very closed off to mental health. But I was very much just like, "Do you know what? Just relax a bit, relax. Like, stop trying to put so much pressure on yourself." Little did I know that her being a massive proponent to that journey was her reassurance, her kindness, and her love for me, despite the crazy ups and downs that was going on. When I would never have felt bad for her if she walked away, and
Mm.
she didn't. She was very conscientious that I needed to do whatever I needed to do, and I don't think she even realizes. I think it's just a natural thing she has, which is amazing about her. Um, I say to I'm going off a little bit on a tangent now, but I say to people all the time, she's a massive inspiration to me. She'll hate that I've said this if she watches this or listens to this, but she is a massive inspiration. I try and be more like her. Don't get me wrong, there's faults about her. There's faults about everyone that I try not to be like. But there's stuff about her and her just natural demeanor and her just natural sense of life that it's just incredibly inspiring. Like, um, she's just her mo, her sort of like starting point with any relationship with most people is kindness and honesty. And you know that sounds like nothing when I say it like that, but how many people struggle with that? Like
Mm.
I struggle with that all the time still, and I know a lot of people who struggle with that. Incredibly cynical and skeptical about all sorts of people and judgmental.
Yeah.
And look, there's nothing wrong with that. People are like that for a certain reason. People are entitled to be however they want to be. You know, her go-to is let's just be kind, let's be nice, and just see what happens. You know, she gets hurt, and I'm protective of her, obviously, but I think I think it's just a wonderful way to be. Yeah. Sorry, a bit of a tangent
Not
there. Bit of a love
not
story
a
for you.
not a bad person to have in your corner by the sounds of things, but
They're
also
not.
worth kind of pointing out to you the obvious that it's not just going to be one-way traffic, right? There are qualities that you've got that are going to also be playing a part in how that relationship has been sustained and evolved over time.
100%. And she's incredibly. So she, when I first met her, she was a wallflower. She still is. She still is quite shy. But fuck me, she's so much more confident than when I first met her, and she's so like I joke around with her all the time, like, God, you're so ballsy these days, and a lot of it's because she's hung around with me, and she's seen how it hasn't affected my life being a bit ballsy, like, and being a bit full on and just not caring too much about what you say. And, there's a middle ground and we meet in the middle. I think it's a massive sign of a great relationship if you meet in the middle, and we do meet in the middle. We clash, but we meet in the middle a lot.
Yeah,
So,
awesome. So we talked about identifying some specific moments, some specific instances along that journey that had sort of made a impact. And with that, I think of things that moments where you realised there were things that you needed to start doing, but equally moments where you suddenly realised there were things that you needed to stop doing or change how you were doing them that have had a lasting impact. Have you got a couple of those front of mind?
yeah, God, there's always so many actually. So I think one a huge one for me was to sort of lean on that acceptance piece a little bit. I can talk on a story around that where imposter syndrome is huge in humans. And I've come across it on numerous points in my life, despite the fact that I stick my head into things that are wildly beyond my capabilities because I kind of thrive in that zone. When I ran Mentalk, which was a local community charity that um, I started with support from some non-execs in COVID to drive a completely non-existent peer support network in Lincoln. When I started that and it was growing and growing and growing, I was sitting on calls, Zoom calls. We used to call them the speakeasies, which was awesome. And I was going to, pool nights that we put on and stuff like that. And I was meeting people from all walks of life. It got to a point where there was a moment where I was at a pool night, I think it was, and there was about 20 people there. Doesn't sound like much, but there's 20 people, there's quite a lot. And I was looking around and there was people who were in their 60s talking to people in their 20s. There was people who'd brought their partners. There was people who had, uh, extremely successful in life. And then there was people who were falling on, bad times, struggling with all sorts of different, financial issues, whatever. And every single one of them was relating and connecting to something between each other and was having a good time. And somebody came up to me. It was one of the patrons. It wasn't someone I knew very well. They came up to me and they said, "I'm so glad I came today. And I'm so glad that you've done this. And you should be um, you should be proud of what you've done. But knowing you for 5 minutes has made me realize that you're always going to be great at doing something like this," or something around that. I've butchered kind of what he said. And I think for that moment, I kind of was struck by what he said. And I kind of, I went into default. I went into old me and I went, why is he saying that about me? Like, what makes me special to set this up? Like, what makes me special to succeed in this? Right. I shouldn't, I don't deserve to have that kind of praise. Right. Because I haven't done anything. I've booked a pool night and people have turned up. But obviously there's loads more to it. Loads more to it. So I probed a little bit, not because I wanted a pat on the back or a slap on the arse. It was more a case of I wanted to know why he felt that way about me, because I wanted to try and learn from that and be better at receiving that kind of compliment. Um, and he turned around to me and he said, "Your your demeanor and your personality is so open. It's like you. Whenever I see you on screen, whenever I see you in person, or whenever I've seen you in a video that you've done online, everything about the way you look and the way you talk is like your arms are completely open all the time." And he said, I don't want to give you a God complex, but he said, I'm quite religious, and something that we talk about a lot is the um, the sort of symbology around why Jesus is always depicted as on the cross or with open arms, and how that's sort of depicted as he wants to open his arms to his people. And he said, and that is around acceptance. It's around natural existence of I am just like you, we are together, and you just have that aura, and whatever you want to call it, however you describe it. And I was really struggling to hold back the tears in that moment. And I let them flow a little bit. And I was like, I'm so happy you said that. I want to feel that. I want to be that. And I don't think there's enough of that. But above all else, I want everyone to be like that. Like, I don't think I'm the best person in the world. But if people can walk down the street and just acknowledge and accept each other to a point where they are more open, they don't have to be exactly perfectly open all the time, but they're just more open to each other, to listen, to be there for each other. That was huge. And that moment set me on a path where I was like, right, okay, I have a power that is natural because I haven't cultivated that. That's a natural thing. So what do I do with that, right? I don't want to forget it. I don't want to force myself to always be like that. I need to accept and understand the balance of it, but also I need to like use it, right? So I'm into like superheroes and stuff. So I was like in comics and all that. So I was like, right, I've got to put myself in these positions where I can use my power. And it just set me on a path of just trying to be a bit more, look, I'm me, you're you, let's do this together, and just stop making, and just try and make everyone feel less isolated no matter what I do. And I think now I've been through that. I think every walk of life I'm like that. Every part of my day, I am trying to be like that. Subconsciously, it's ingrained in me. I'm not doing anything. I don't think about it, but it's taught me that I can do that and I should do that. And that's just wonderful and beautiful, right? So that's one. um, I think another one, and this is, I'm going to go a bit woo woo on you now. One of the points in my life that has changed my life is when I started to investigate new things that I could do for myself. So I read a book called Why the Woo Woo Works by Dr. David Hamilton, who's a pharmacologist, used to work in psychiatric help, so dishing out antidepressants. And he took it upon himself to look at Eastern and sort of woo-woo stuff and find science and stuff behind it all. It's a great book. If you've not read it, read it. If you've read it, amazing. And some of the mind-blowing stuff in there was amazing around just opening your mind to certain things that you might have went, that's absolute guff. The stuff around the power of prayer and cultivating thought, right? Which they've tested in labs. And whilst people don't, manifestation and all these different things get sort of bastardized and turned into something they're not, the power of cultivating thought and thinking strongly and feeling, wholeheartedly about something does affect the world that we live in a very minuscule way, but sometimes in a massive way. But it was telling me stuff about Reiki, it was telling me stuff about yoga, and it was telling me about Buddhist practices and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going, this is all really interesting. What can I bring into my life and just try? And if I don't like it, doesn't make sense. Let's just crack on. At least I've tried it. And one of the transformational things I tried was a float tank. So this is a sensory deprivation float tank thing. There's loads of them all over the shop. You've probably got one near you. There's two in Lincoln, which is bizarre because Lincoln is not normally got anything. I found a guy, and the guy is amazing. He's like I connected with him on so many levels. Great guy, and he's got a float tank and a setup with a sauna and all this kind of stuff. And the float tank, for context sake, is sensory deprivation. Big tank that you sit in, Epsom salts, you float in water, you close the loop, you're in a ball. And if you're claustrophobic, don't do it. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not claustrophobic. You float on the water. There's lights, or you can have it completely pitch black. And he pumps in a bit of like soundscapey kind of, frequency-led music that is around kind of some of the stuff I really like that I've fallen onto from another colleague of mine, actually another friend of mine, is around this sort of like different gamma waves, whatever. So I pumped in a bit of that. The sensory deprivation thing for me is someone who has ADHD and kind of struggles with like whirring minds and thoughts and stuff like that. Got in there, uncomfortable for about 10, 15 minutes while I got comfortable, water in my ears. Oh, the salt's gone in my eyes. Oh no. Oh, I feel horrible, I feel weird, I feel fat and hairy, and I'm in this tank full of water. Oh, I can't stop my thoughts from whirring around. It was absolutely mad. And then about 15, 20 minutes in, I just thought, just stop, just fucking stop thinking, mate. Like, just had a massive go at myself in my head. Like, just stop thinking, just calm down, whatever. So I started to listen to the music and close my eyes. And I've dabbled meditation. I kind of know how meditation works. And I started to just try and calm my thoughts, just listen to my breathing and just kind of focus on something that was nothing but my thoughts. And within about, so you get an hour, and within about 25 minutes of it, I'm crying my eyes out. I'm filling that tank with tears, like they're literally streaming down my face. But I was smiling while I'm doing it. And the thoughts that are coming in my head were things about past experiences in when I was a child, and they were like scoring a goal. It was, getting the love and appreciation of like my dad when we won a cup or something. And it was all these like great memories that were tied to like really heart-wrenching things in my life. And then towards the end of the thoughts that were flying around, I started thinking about what I'm lacking in life. And it was like, I don't have a mother, I don't have this, I don't have that, right? And all these things were just coming out, emotions were just coming out. I finished the float tank and I got out, and you go in a shower and you sort of shower it all off and what have you. And I was trying to almost like reflect on what was going on. I was trying to conclude it in my head. Why was I thinking all this? Like trying to put a reason behind it all. Like I always try and put a reason to everything. And ultimately I was just stood there in this shower and I was going, I think I needed that. That's the only reason I did it. I think my body was telling me I needed to just let a load of shit out. I needed to cleanse my mind. And what that's done for me, I don't often go. I try and go once a month, once or twice a month. And sometimes I go and they're just like nice and relaxing, good for your body, just relaxing, just chilling. Sometimes I go and I really need it. Like I really need that like space. And sometimes I can't go. It costs money, like in time. So I just don't go. And what it's taught me though is in that quietness and in that space that you can create, whether that's meditation, whether it's breath work, those kinds of things that I've took on as well over the last year or two, it's allowing those feelings to come out. Because I think even if you can clear your heads of your sort of conscious thoughts, the voice in your head that's chatting away to you about all sorts of weird stuff, sometimes even though your mind's clear, you can't access those things you've boxed away. It doesn't come. So accepting that you can or can't, depending on the space where the moon is in the sky or something, like whatever stuff you can't control. That's the first point. Second point is when it comes, let it come. Like, yeah. Well, we're conditioned. Oh my God, my eyes are starting to cry. Stop. And why? I think somebody said something to me as well. A mate of mine who's he's actually a dentist. He's not a doctor, but he's a doctor because he's a dentist. And he turned around to me and he said, "Do you know why we've got tear ducts?" I says, "No. Why have we got tear ducts? It's to clean your eyes or something." He said, "To cry." He said, "They're tears. What are you on about?" And I says, "Oh yeah. What do you mean by that though? Like what?" And he says, "Well, the body's supposed to cry. It's supposed to cry. It's the same as it's supposed to sweat if you're hot. Like your body's designed to do things to make you feel better. So your body sweats when you're hot to try and cool you down. Your body shivers and your hair stands on ends when you're cold to try and warm you up, right? Try and signify to you need warming up. Your eyes cry because you need to let something out." And I was just like, is that real? Let me go on Wikipedia.
It's a chemical it's a chemical trigger, isn't it?
Yeah. And as someone who's always struggled with crying about anything major, going to a funeral, can't cry, stick a fucking soppy film on, I'm bawling my eyes out. Go figure, let it out. So now I know the triggers, and I know that if I stick on Mighty Ducks, I'll cry at the end. Do you know what I mean? So I'll stick it on, right? But, or Toy Story or something. The amount of times my kids have been watching films, right, and it gets to the end and the sort of big moment, and they're going, "You okay, Daddy?" And I'm going, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Do you know what? Do you know what? I can relate to that. I find myself like my eyes welling up at the weirdest of moments in these films and TV shows. Like, what is happening here? But the one that I've been mocked mercilessly by my wife and kids was the remake of Ghostbusters,
All
where
right.
they brought back Egon,
Oh yeah.
and the actor had actually died, and
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
just thought, because, the childhood memories you have with a film like Ghostbusters, but I thought the way that they wove him in as a ghost when he'd actually died in real life,
Mm,
I just
mm,
thought that was so spot on, and I
yeah.
was sobbing and sobbing, and yeah, the girls and my wife were like, "What's going on here?" Um,
I
and
find I
all I
always
had to do was point out that anytime Marley and Me comes on, they are
yeah, yeah.
all absolutely beside themselves.
Yeah, you see, that doesn't get me, Marley and Me. And this is the thing where people are going, "Are you some sort of heartless freak?" And I'm like, "No, no, no. Stick Toy Story on. I'll show you." Do you know what I mean? Like that for me, there's several things that set me off, but normally it's something so small, and it is linked. Weirdly, it is linked to my past. One of the things I used to cry at all the time was every Saturday when X Factor or The Voice or Pop Idol or whatever was on. I'd watch it religiously because I used to sing in a former life, and I'd watch it religiously. And when there's a sob story about parents being proud of their kids, like I laugh about it now because I'm like, I know why that affected me, but I
Yeah,
was in floods, like proper floods. Why don't anybody in my life? Why is no one proud of me? Kind of thing. Like that's why I was crying. But yeah, no, I think the float tank thing, just bringing it back to some sense. Um, Basically, it shouted at me from above, like you can cry for no reason. There's a reason underneath it. You don't need to access the reason. You don't need to put a pin on why it's happening. You don't need to allow everything to have a purpose other than what it's doing. Um,
yeah,
and that thing that my mate said about tear ducts, you could stick that across most of your body parts. Why does your heart pump the blood that it's pumping? You're not controlling that. It's
yeah.
completely
Well, and
autonomous.
and anxiety as well, right? Anxiety is the body's natural response to a threat. It's
Yeah, yeah,
when it's sustained indefinitely. That's when it's problematic. It's normal to feel apprehension
yeah,
and nervousness going into an unknown situation, right? It's just it's not normal to feel like that for a very, very long time without any let up. That's when it's a problem.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, I've been through that a few times. So yeah, and I think so. Yeah, the float tank thing has told me to ask questions about bodily functions and why they're happening to enable a better future, short term future, or
Mm,
just to let it go and enable it to be more of what it needs to be. Um, yeah, so those two are two of many that I could flag
yeah,
pivotal moments in my last 12 years, definitely.
yeah. Well, those are two great moments. They're really tangible. You're able to talk about them with, as I said at the start, you're very lucid and um, talking about those things in detail, and you can see the thought process that you've been going through to get to that point and to get to that understanding. And that's the important thing, right? We want to encourage more people to embark on that thought process
Mm.
and understand that it will take a long time for them to get to some sort of recognition or understanding, but it's a lot quicker to get there if you start than if you continue to bottle it up and refuse to acknowledge that you need to even think about these things, right?
Yeah, there's a phrase I used last night when I was talking to a friend of mine, and I'm going to butcher it because I can't remember the full phrase, but it was around there's no change without effort or something similar to that, and it was like something that I'm not talking like toxic effort, like you've got to fucking absolutely hammer everything, but if you don't make any effort at all, nothing's going to change. You're making a choice, you're inviting that to continue. You're inviting something that you maybe don't want to happen to continue because you're not making that effort to change.
And that's it. That's the key thing, isn't it? It is a choice.
Mm, yeah.
Once you've realized it is a choice. If you haven't yet realized it's not a choice. You just haven't had your epiphany.
Yeah.
Oh, John, we're at question 5 now,
Oh, wow. Gone quick.
and that is, if what you've talked about today resonates with somebody and they found themselves in a similar position, similar situation, or even just a similar feeling to the kind of feelings that you've had, what's the most important thing that they can do for themselves?
Whenever I get asked questions like this or something similar, I always try and stay away from the obvious answers. The obvious answers that I will say anyway, but they're not going to be my answer. So talking to people, finding a safe space to talk, finding space, being on your own, right? A lot of times we feel trapped and we feel like we can't get space to be on our own and just have that time. Those simple things that don't seem so simple can be pivotal. But what I'm going to offer as my thing is, and I think it's kind of turned into a seamless theme of the conversation. I think the one thing that's been one of the many things, but probably one of the most pivotal changes I made, pivotal things that I brought into my life was acceptance. And I think if there's one thing I think anybody listening to this who can connect to what I'm saying feels or feels that they're at the same sort of point I was 5-10 years ago, whatever, I think accept yourself, accept the feelings you're having, accept the pain you're going through, accept it to a point of acknowledging it's a thing and it exists, but don't accept that it's going to be there forever. So fight, battle, whatever you want to call it, challenge. And I say this about the good and the bad. So I'll explain what I mean. I'll start with the bad. It's easiest to explain, but I'll explain what I mean about the good in a little while. You've got bad thoughts, you've got bad feelings, you've got bad things happening to you. A lot of people look for blame, look for shame, put shame on themselves, and then that turns to pain. And getting out of that blame, shame, pain spiral is really tricky. Accepting that it's just a thing and it exists in the moment destabilizes it. It lacks its control, turns its power on its head. And then you can have the choice. You can take control and you can decide to do something different, or you can pull yourself away, or you can feel something different. You can engage in something that changes your feelings. Those are all options available. They're all choices available. Like we said before, if you don't want to take the choice, it's just going to continue. What I mean by accepting and challenging the good stuff really is similar to what is twofold, similar to what I said earlier about accepting the good and going, that's because of me and that's okay. I'm not arrogant. I was a consequence. So there's this phrase I use, and it's not a phrase, it's just linguistics. But if you hear in the news, there's an incident where someone died, right? Horrible. It's an incident. It's bad. Incidents are always bad. Why is it bad? Why is it bad when an incident is just something that happened? First of all, that's the first process. Second process is when it's a coincidence, why do people attune a coincidence to luck? Luck isn't a thing. I don't believe in luck, right? I believe that coincidence is an incident that happened because you were there. It's a cooperative incident. And coincidence can be good and bad, but a lot of the time we go, oh, wasn't that a lucky coincidence? No. You put yourself in that position. Yes, there's factors that you didn't control, but you controlled some of it. So actually, that lucky coincidence you had, well done. You did that, right? So challenge the good. Like, don't just sit there and go, oh, aren't I lucky? No, you're grateful because you've cultivated something that's happened, something good in your life. You know, going back to what I was saying about my wife, for example, I joked and I said, sometimes I worry she's surprised she's still here. Deep down, I know why she's still here. And she's here because I'm actually a good person. I'm trying to be a good person and I'm trying to be the best husband and partner I can be. She wouldn't be here if I wasn't. So that's on me. That's my choice. And I decided to do that so that I kept her, whatever way you want to describe it. And I challenge that in a sense of that isn't happening to me it's happening for me because I created that thing. So yes, I'm a marketer, I'm creative, but I believe in you create your life, you create the things around you, good, bad, and ugly. And if you start to accept that things that are going on, your feelings, the incidents that happen in your life, the daily things that come your way, are some form of good or bad luck, and it's just the spirits or the whatever you want to call it, the what do they call it, the fate of the world, right? I don't prescribe to that. I don't think it's healthy. It's too disconnected to the human condition, and that's another one, by the way. Human condition makes it sound like we're all ill, right? Because we're humans. No, condition and conditioning and the conditions that we have can be good, bad, ugly, and great. And I think being a human is fucking great. So we just need to take more control of our acceptance levels and take more choice and feel the way we want to feel about things, whether that's good, bad, or ugly. We have those emotions, they creep in, and you can't control them, but you can control the next one. That's the one thing I always say. Reactions are one thing, but action is something you can focus on and control. So, yeah, sorry, slightly tangential there, but it was decent, I think.
Not at all. No, it was really good, and that resonates because we've sort of alluded to this slightly earlier in the conversation about the choices that you've got that you don't necessarily realize that you've got, the agency that you have. It's just really leaning into the idea that you can happen to life instead of life just happening to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's something that 100% I can see in my own behaviors, and the kind of the key difference that has affected how I feel about things in the last 6 months has been switching that from things are happening to me, it's all out of my control, to I'm going to engineer as many opportunities as possible to make the things that I want to happen.
That's good.
It's a game changer. It's a complete game
changer. And I think, you feel great about doing that, don't you? And I think one of the reasons why I don't prescribe to fate and things happening to you is it's controlling your feelings for you. It's just prescribing. It's like Dr. Fate has turned around and said, you're going to feel shit about this today. Whereas if you're taking control and you're cultivating opportunities, even if things don't pan out, so what? Move on. You've controlled that.
If they don't pan out as you planned, you can still learn from it, right? You can still get better and be more intentional and in a slightly different way the next time.
Yeah, and this thing of, I can't learn from this, it's wasted time. Well, no, because even if you can't learn from something, it's never wasted time, because the process in itself had potential and opportunity. And those those areas of life are where, to put it scientifically, it's where the dopamine is. It's where it's where you get a good vibe, or whatever people want to call it, right? The young people of today and their vibes. But I just feel like if we don't create enough of that, then we will just have a lot of negativity thrown at us, living in this modern age that we have of information overload and all these sort of negative news stories and stuff. Like, one of the ways we can fight it is create our own information that's coming our way, create our own feelings, create our own bubble, whatever you want to call it. And somebody said to me the other day, oh, the more you do that, the more you create your own bubble, it's going to burst eventually. Who says? Who says? Who's in charge of my bubble? Me. So if it bursts, it's because I decided to let it burst.
Yeah.
Sorry, you ain't going to burst my bubble. And I think it's, look, all of what I've said, you ain't going to click your fingers and get to the point. And actually, that's probably something to leave with, in a sense of, I'm not an expert in any of this, and I'm not perfect. I'm an expert to a point in myself, and I'm proud of the progress I've made. But I'm not perfect. I have massive bad points, and I'm really against quite a lot of the stuff I've said. I sometimes really struggle to do. But Christ Almighty, sometimes I hear people talking about things that affect them, and obviously my empathetic nature comes in and goes, "Oh, try this, try that," helping them. And in the second breath in my brain, I'm going, I don't feel that way anymore. None of that affects me, and that's the progress I've made. And I'm going, oh God, that's years ago I would be like, same as you, mate. I'm the same. And I just think, Christ, it was small steps. It's 12 years. It's whatever you want to call it. It's 40 years, really, if you think about it, where I've, got to where I am, and I've got a journey ahead of me, and I'm sure loads of stuff will hit me along the way. And it's about how you react and how you act afterwards. For me, it's not about what happens in the moment. It's about, well, it's a lot about what happens in the moment, but it's more about how you react to it. So, yeah.
And breathe.
Yeah. Christ.
John, thank you, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you. And I
Thank
know
you.
that there's going to be a lot of ground in this that is going to be useful for other people to hear as well. And that's
Fingers
why we do it.
crossed. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it will. It will. I have zero doubt. And thank you also to everybody that has listened or watched the episode along with us. If you would like to support the show in any way, shape, or form, there are a number of things you can do. You can share this with your friends, specifically if you know somebody that this is going to resonate with. You can give us a review on places like Spotify. You can subscribe to the channel across all of the places that you'll find the pod. And if you'd like to chip in a small financial contribution to help us with the tools that we're using to build this show, you can do that now through buymeacoffee.com/goodenoughchats. And I'll drop a link to that and to the goodenoughchats.com website in the show notes. In the meantime, thanks again, John, for coming along and having this conversation. And we will be
Thank
back
you, mate.
soon with another episode of Good Enough Chats. Cheers.